No one in the small Kentucky town ever expected the Slaton sisters' story to turn this dark. For years, viewers across the world laughed with them, cried with them, and rooted for their massive weight loss transformations. But now, something far more shocking than surgery struggles or family fights was unfolding, something that no one, not even the sisters themselves, could have predicted. The morning sunlight poured across the Halterman family's worn-out kitchen table like fire on steel, bright, sharp, and unforgiving, as the phone rang with the news that would shake their entire world. Amy and Tammy Slaton, the infamous 1,000-pound sisters, had been arrested. The charges? Money laundering and financial fraud. At first, everyone thought it had to be a joke, some kind of bizarre misunderstanding or prank. But the police statement made everything chillingly clear. Both individuals have been formally detained. They will remain in custody until further court processing. They will not be released to family. Access is restricted. Amy's mugshot photo looked like someone who had just realized gravity still existed, wide-eyed, terrified, and confused. Tammy's, on the other hand, looked like she was ready to fight the entire legal system with her bare hands. Inside the holding cell, Amy sat hunched over on the cold metal bench, tears rolling down her cheeks as she whispered to anyone who would listen, "I don't even know how to use my banking app. How could I launder money?" Across from her, Tammy clutched the bars and shook them like she was in a dramatic movie trailer. "Money laundering. I can't even wash my own clothes. Y'all out your minds." One officer coughed to hide a laugh. Another stared at her completely expressionless, probably numb from hours of similar chaos. Amy sniffled again. Maybe somebody stole her identity? Like cyber stuff? Tammy rolled her eyes, so hard it looked painful. "Girl, ain't nobody stealing our identity. The only thing people steal from us is snack orders." Back home, the news spread faster than gossip at Sunday church. Chris paced the living room, rubbing his head and muttering, "Those girls can't even organize their sock drawer. How in the world would they organize a criminal scheme?" Amanda slammed her fist on the table so hard a salt shaker bounced.
No.
Nope. I refuse. We're not sitting here while our sisters get locked up like they robbed a bank. Get your shoes on, we're going. Within minutes, the entire Slaton Halterman clan piled into 2 vans because one van wasn't enough for the chaos, volume, and collective determination of this family. When they arrived at the police station, Amanda stormed through the doors like she was entering a courtroom finale scene. "We demand the immediate release of Amy and Tammy." The officer at the front desk didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, their case is now under court control. They will remain detained until further notice." Caleb, Tammy's husband, gasped like someone had snatched his last snack cake. "Sir, Tammy cannot launder money. She thinks PayPal is a cleaning product." Even the police officer raised an eyebrow at that. Chris stepped forward more calmly, trying diplomacy. "Look, sir, there has to be a misunderstanding." But the officer cut him short. "This conversation is over. And for the record, this family is temporarily banned from returning." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Even Amanda, fierce, loud, fearless Amanda, just stared.
Banned.
From a police station. Only the Slaton family could live a life so chaotic that even law enforcement needed a break from them. Meanwhile, back behind bars, Amy and Tammy already started making connections. Amy shared stories about motherhood, winning sympathy from other inmates. Tammy? She was negotiating with prisoners, like she was running a criminal snack empire. "Got any tacos? I'll trade you peanut butter cups." The guards watched in disbelief. In less than a day, the Slaton sisters were already infamous inside jail. And as the court date drew closer, one thing became undeniable. Whether they were innocent, clueless, or accidentally involved in something bigger than themselves, this wasn't just another season of chaos. This was the beginning of a battle that could change their lives forever. Because now, the world wasn't watching their weight. The world was waiting to see whether the Slaton sisters would walk out free, or return to a jail cell with nothing but accusations and confusion hanging over them. The ride home from the police station felt unnaturally quiet, which was rare for the Slaton family. Normally, A car full of them meant chaos, arguing over music, snacks, space, and whose fault it was that the air conditioners smelled like cheese. But this time, everyone just stared ahead, stunned. Finally, Chris broke the silence. I mean money laundering? Laundering. As in illegal banking? They can barely manage laundry. Amanda shook her head, eyes burning with fury. It don't matter what the charges are. They're our family. Nobody gets to lock them up without us knowing the truth. Her voice wasn't just angry, it was protective. The kind of tone that meant she was ready to fight anyone, including the FBI, the state of Kentucky, or the vending machine that stole her dollar last week. Caleb, sitting in the back seat, looked devastated. She's scared. I know she's scared. For once, nobody cracked a joke. When they got home, the air felt heavy. The normally loud Halterman-Slaton household was eerily still. Should we call a lawyer? Misty asked quietly, setting down her purse. Amanda nodded. Yes. And not some cheap TV coupon lawyer. We need someone who can handle real cases, not just parking tickets and cat custody battles. Chris raised a brow. We don't even know if they did anything. Amanda pointed at him sharply. Exactly. And that's why someone else might be trying to set them up. The room went still. Because the thought, the possibility, wasn't impossible. The sisters were famous. They had money now. Sponsorship contracts, appearance fees, TLC checks, millions of followers. And wherever money and fame go, jealousy follows. Chris exhaled slowly. So, you think someone's framing them? Amanda shrugged, jaw tight. I'm saying nothing about this feels right. That night, while the family argued over theories, panic, and possible suspects, something was happening miles away inside the jail. Amy sat quietly, hugging her knees to her chest. Every few seconds, she wiped tears from her cheeks. A soft voice interrupted her breakdown. Hey, you holding up? It was an inmate sitting on the nearby bench. Older, calm, tattooed, but gentle-eyed. Amy sniffled. I don't belong here. I'm not bad. I'm just tired. And scared. The woman nodded like she'd heard that story 1,000 times. Sometimes life throws fire at people who ain't never touched matches. Amy blinked. She didn't fully understand, but somehow it made sense. Meanwhile, Tammy was adjusting to jail much differently. She had already declared herself a prison queen and was now giving unsolicited advice to everyone around her. Listen, y'all, if they try to serve boiled broccoli again, we revolting. I'm not built for flavorless suffering. Someone across the room shouted. Girl, we already eat prison food. We are suffering. Tammy cackled so loudly, the guard jumped. But beneath that humor, there was fear. Real fear. When she was finally alone, when the inmates stopped laughing, when the guards walked past, Tammy whispered the sentence she didn't want anyone to hear. What if I don't get out? Her breath hitched. She thought about her weight loss progress, her engagement, the future she fought so hard to reach. And for the first time in a long time, Tammy wasn't angry. She wasn't loud. She wasn't joking. She was scared, deeply, painfully scared. Back at home, the family gathered around the table like a war meeting. Amanda slammed a notebook down. We need to figure out who benefits from this. Who has access to their accounts? Who's mad at them? Who wants attention? Who wants money? Chris raised a hand weakly. Could be like anyone who ever met them? Amanda rolled her eyes. Don't get smart. This is serious. Misty leaned forward. We need facts, not assumptions. Then Caleb whispered the question no one wanted to voice. What if they actually did something? Not on purpose, but by being careless? The room froze. Not because they believed Amy and Tammy were criminals, but because they all knew something was true. The sisters weren't great with boundaries, details, passwords, contracts, or fine print. And sometimes, mistakes become crimes. Amanda slowly sat down, expression softening, not angry now, not defensive, just heartbroken. Whatever the truth is, we're going to uncover it. Outside, the Kentucky sun dipped low on the horizon, orange, heavy, and uncertain. And as night swallowed the sky, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't just a scandal. It was a turning point, a storm, a moment that would decide whether Amy and Tammy's story ended in disaster or in survival. When filming first began for the new season, producers expected drama, but not the kind that came wrapped in grief, silence, and unanswered questions. Tammy had always been outspoken, full of raw emotion and unpredictable reactions, but this time, she was different. Her voice was quieter. Her anger wasn't explosive, just tired. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes from peace, but the kind that forms when someone has been broken and hasn't figured out how to put the pieces back together. Those closest to her described her days as unpredictable. Some mornings she would wake up determined, ready to push through her routine, ready to face the world with strength. But then, without warning, something would trigger a memory, a smell, or a moment, and the grief would hit like a truck. A small joke someone made, a familiar song playing in the background, a missing name at a family gathering. Any reminder was enough to bring everything crashing back. Her family tried hard to support her. Amy, despite everything, reached out as often as she could. She called. She texted. She showed up. Sometimes Tammy opened the door and let her in. Other times, she let the phone ring until it stopped. The cameras captured some of these moments. Not all, because even reality TV knows when the moment becomes too real to exploit. But what was filmed was enough to paint a picture far heavier than any storyline the show had ever followed. At one point, Tammy sat on her porch, staring off into the distance for several minutes before she finally spoke. Her voice cracked as she admitted something that fans never expected to hear from her. "I feel alone. Even in a room full of people, I feel alone." Her words echoed the kind of grief that does not fade with time. It just changes shape. Tammy had been through surgeries, weight battles, public criticism, and near-death experiences. But this was different. This was emotional pain, deep, personal, and quiet. The kind that doesn't show up on an X-ray or test result. The kind that makes breathing feel like work. As the season continued filming, producers, family members, and fans all began asking the same question. Was Tammy strong enough to go through with another season? Because no matter how many viewers tune in, ratings don't matter when someone's life and mental stability hang in the balance. As weeks passed, the dynamic within the family began to shift. Everyone was moving differently, speaking more gently, stepping more carefully, almost as if they were all living inside a glass house that could shatter with one wrong word. Even the humor, which normally flowed easily in the Slaton family, felt forced. Someone would crack a joke, and instead of laughter, there would be a pause, everyone silently waiting to see if Tammy would smile or break. There were days where she tried to act normal. She would join the family for dinner, participate in conversations, and even film confessionals. But the pain still lingered in her eyes. Fans always said Tammy had expressive eyes full of fire, attitude, and sometimes defiance. But now they looked distant, almost hollow, as if she were physically present but emotionally somewhere far away. Confessional studio crew members would later say she sat in the chair longer than usual before speaking. Normally, she was quick to respond, sharp, reactive, unfiltered. But now she took slow breaths, sometimes letting long silences fill the room before she finally found the strength to speak. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted softly, fingers twisting together in her lap. "I don't know how to wake up every day knowing she ain't here no more. Part of me keeps expecting her to walk in the door." Her voice wavered, and then she whispered something almost too quiet for microphones to catch. "I wasn't ready to lose her." The producers asked gently if she wanted to stop filming, but she shook her head. "No. Because if I stop, then I'm just sitting at home alone with the memories. At least here, I'm doing something. At least here, I'm not just drowning in it." Her decision surprised many, especially because reality TV had never been kind to Tammy. The criticism, the judgment, the constant spotlight, it had taken a toll on her for years. But now, oddly enough, filming became a lifeline. It gave her structure. It gave her people. It gave her something to wake up for. Still, even with the cameras rolling and family trying to support her, Grief didn't leave. It simply waited, quiet, heavy, and patient. One night during production, Tammy broke down unexpectedly. She excused herself from dinner, went into the bathroom, and sobbed until her chest hurt. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep, where sorrow replaces oxygen and memories become painful reminders of what can never be undone. Amy found her later sitting on the bathroom floor. The two sisters didn't speak. They didn't need to. Amy just sat beside her, leaned her shoulder against Tammy's, and they cried together. Two siblings bound not just by blood, but by the shared weight of a loss they never prepared for. It was messy, raw, human. And for the first time in a long time, Tammy didn't push her away. Not physically, not emotionally, just quietly, she let herself be comforted. Because in that moment, she needed connection more than pride. As filming continued, conversations around the show's future started circulating online. Fans were confused. Some believed Season 8 was cancelled. Others swore filming was still happening based on leaked photos and behind-the-scenes sightings. But inside the family, the conversation was much deeper and far more emotional. Producers approached Tammy privately one afternoon. They wanted to know if she still wanted to be part of the show moving forward. They knew she was hurting. They knew her life was changing. And they didn't want to push her for the sake of television. But they also knew the story was real, raw in a way that most reality TV never captures. When they asked her if she wanted to continue, she didn't give a fast response. She folded her arms, stared at the floor, and took a long breath before answering. "I don't know," she said softly. "Sometimes it feels like the world's watching me fall apart." One producer gently replied, "They're not watching you fall apart. They're watching you survive." That sentence hit her harder than she expected. For years, the world saw Tammy as the dramatic one, the stubborn one, the one always making chaos. She was the meme, the TikTok sound, the viral moment. And for a long time, she played into that role without even realizing it. But now, she wasn't a character. She wasn't a storyline. She was a grieving woman trying to make sense of a world that suddenly felt smaller and colder. After a long silence, she finally said, "If me telling this part helps somebody else not feel alone, then yeah, keep rolling." It wasn't a dramatic moment. It wasn't staged. There were no lights, no hype, no dramatic music, just honesty. And that honesty started to change her. For the first time in a long time, Tammy wasn't being filmed surviving obesity or surgery or addiction or relationships. She was being filmed surviving heartbreak. Outside of filming, the support from fans began pouring in: handwritten letters, artwork, flowers, stuffed animals, messages from people who had lost siblings, parents, spouses. Messages saying things like, "I know you're hurting. I've been there. You will survive this." She started keeping them in a box, not because she planned to reread every message, but because she couldn't throw them away. In a strange way, they made her feel less alone. Amy also noticed the shift. She could see Tammy fighting, not with the world, but for herself. She saw her journaling, sitting outside more often, going to grief counseling, and actually listening. During one filmed family dinner, Amy looked at her sister and gently asked, "You doing okay today?" Tammy paused, then nodded. "Not great. Not terrible. Just trying." And that small phrase, "just trying," became a turning point. She wasn't pretending. She wasn't collapsing. She wasn't shutting everyone out. She was learning to exist in the space between broken and healing. And everyone around her could feel it. The grief was still there, heavy, painful, unpredictable, but slowly, Tammy was beginning to discover something she hadn't expected, strength she never knew she had. As weeks passed, life slowed into a new rhythm, the kind that comes after loss. Not normal, but survivable. The cameras captured fewer tears and more quiet moments, Tammy doing puzzles, sitting outside near her newly planted flowers, even trying out new cooking routines with healthier ingredients. It wasn't perfect. Some days she woke up angry and didn't want to speak to anyone. Some days she laughed so hard the family forgot, just for a moment, what they were going through. Healing wasn't a straight line, but it was happening bit by bit. One afternoon, during a casual scene that wasn't meant to be emotional, Chris turned to Tammy and said, "You know, sis, you look lighter." Tammy rolled her eyes at him. "You callin' me skinny or callin' me less angry?" He smirked. "Both." It was the first time the whole room laughed together in weeks. But underneath that humor was truth. Tammy was lighter, not just physically, but emotionally. Her grief wasn't gone, but she was learning how to carry it without letting it consume her. That same week, producers arranged something unexpected. They asked Tammy if she would be open to speaking with a grief specialist on camera, someone who had worked with families who lost siblings. At first, she hesitated. She didn't like crying in front of people, especially the entire world. But after thinking about it overnight, she agreed. The session took place in her living room, soft lighting, her favorite blanket over her legs, and a box of tissues sitting nearby, just in case. At first, Tammy was quiet. She picked at her nails, avoided eye contact, and answered in one-word sentences. But then the therapist asked a question that changed the tone entirely. "What's the memory you want to protect the most?" Tammy blinked. For a moment, she couldn't answer. Not because she didn't know, but because she knew too well. Finally, her voice cracked as she whispered. The way she laughed. She had the kind of laugh that filled a whole room. Her eyes filled with tears, and she let them fall. No hiding, no wiping them away fast to pretend they weren't there. The therapist nodded gently. "And what do you think she'd tell you right now if she could?" Tammy let out a shaky breath. "That I'm stronger than I think," she said, her voice barely audible. "And that she ain't gone forever, just not here the same way anymore." Filming stopped early that day, not because producers wanted drama, but because they recognized something sacred had happened. For the first time since the loss, Tammy wasn't running from the pain. She was facing it head-on. That night, after everyone left and the house became quiet, Tammy sat on the edge of her bed and whispered into the dark, "I'm still here and I'm trying." It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a speech. It was survival, raw, honest, and real. And slowly, it became her new truth. As fall settled in and the leaves outside Tammy's home shifted into warm tones of gold and red, something inside her shifted too. The grief was still there. It always would be, but now there were moments when she allowed herself to feel other emotions again. Curiosity, peace, even hope. She started going for short walks outside with the help of her therapist and Andrea, who had been a steady source of love and patience throughout everything. Sometimes they didn't talk at all on those walks. They just existed beside each other, the quiet acting like a gentle blanket instead of a weight. One morning, as they reached the driveway, Tammy paused and looked up at the sky. "You ever notice how the world keeps moving no matter what?" she asked quietly. Andrea nodded. "Yeah. But the hard part is choosing to move with it." Tammy exhaled slowly, the words settling into her chest. "I'm trying," she whispered. That same week, the camera crew returned, not to push her into emotional scenes, but to document her next chapter. The producers had noticed something. Fans weren't just following the show for shock or chaos anymore. They were following because Tammy was inspiring them through her resilience. One producer said softly during a mic check, "You've become the heart of this show." Tammy blinked, stunned by the weight of those words. She didn't say anything, but later that night she wrote in her journal, something she'd started doing in therapy, and she finally put down something she hadn't been able to write before. "I want to live. Not just survive. Live." Her progress wasn't only emotional, her physical health continued to strengthen too. She was now consistently maintaining her weight loss, staying active, and working with specialists to prepare mentally for more skin removal surgeries in the future. During a doctor appointment, filmed for the show, the surgeon told her something she never thought she'd hear. "Tammy, you're a model patient now. Your effort, your discipline, your commitment, it's paying off." She stared at him, stunned. "For real?" "For real," he confirmed with a smile. And for the first time in a long time, Tammy allowed herself to feel proud. Not the kind that came from attention. Not the kind that needed validation. But the kind that grows quietly, like roots, after you've fought harder than anyone could ever understand. Later that evening, The family gathered for dinner at Amy's house. There was laughter, there was teasing, there was chaos, but there was also something else. Peace. Amy squeezed Tammy's hand under the table and whispered, "I know this year's been hell, but you're stronger than all of it." Tammy looked at her sister, the one who had walked beside her through hospital beds, oxygen tubes, arguments, breakthroughs, and heartbreak. And she replied with a small smile, "Yeah, I think I finally believe that." For the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel like a stranger. It felt like home. As winter approached, the Slaton family faced another major shift, one that no one saw coming. TLC executives called with news. They wanted to renew the show for another season, but this time, they wanted to change the tone and direction. Instead of chaos, arguments, and shock value, they wanted the season to focus on healing, growth, accountability, and the emotional and physical realities of weight loss and grief. The producers spoke clearly on the conference call. People didn't just watch the show this past year. They felt it. Tammy, your journey resonated with millions. They saw the pain, but they also saw your strength. The world is rooting for you. For a moment, Tammy couldn't speak. She had gone from being the person everyone assumed was the villain or the lost cause, to being someone people saw as brave, resilient, and deeply human. Amy nudged her on the couch. "Say something before they think you fell asleep." Tammy wiped her eyes. I want to do it," she said softly. "But only if we make it real. No faking stories. No staged drama. I want it honest." The call went silent. Then the producer replied, "That's exactly what we want." Over the following weeks, filming began, but this time, Tammy controlled the pace. She let cameras into her therapy sessions, doctor check-ins, cooking lessons, personal reflections, quiet moments of grief, new routines with Andrea. One scene especially touched the crew. Tammy sat in her living room, holding a small framed photo of her late sister. She spoke softly, voice trembling. "I miss her every day, but I know she'd want me to keep going. Not shrink from life, live it." Then she added with a tired but real smile, "And I'm trying, sis. I really am." Nobody in the room breathed for a moment. A producer later whispered, "That wasn't reality TV. That was real life." The world outside took notice too. Social media comments changed from mocking jokes to messages like, "Tammy, you're inspiring me to try again. For real this time. Not for the cameras. Not for the storyline. For me and for my boys." For a moment, Tammy didn't speak. Then she said, "Amy, that's the best thing you've ever told me." Amy sniffed. "You'll help me, right?" Tammy didn't hesitate. "Always." 2 days later, Andrea and Leah arrived with an idea. "What if we make this a sister journey, not just a Tammy journey?" Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Amy nodded. "Yeah," she whispered. "Let's do it together." Their first joint health session was awkward and chaotic, exactly what fans expected, but with something new underneath. Hope. They did breathing exercises, intentional walking, mindful eating, a meal prep session, a goals list, and they laughed. Real, unfiltered, belly laughter. At one point, Tammy joked, "If they make us do yoga next, I'm suing somebody." Andrea smirked. "They are. Tomorrow." Amy turned pale. Tammy groaned dramatically. "Girl, we're gonna fold like laundry." Everyone laughed, but no one quit. That night, Tammy wrote in her journal, something she never thought she'd do. The entry was short, simple, but powerful. For the first time, "I don't feel like a burden. I feel like someone worth saving, and someone capable of saving myself." She stared at the words for a long time. Then she closed the book with a satisfied breath. This wasn't just weight loss. This wasn't just a show. This was a rebirth, slow, painful, imperfect, but real. And Tammy wasn't just surviving anymore. She was rebuilding. One choice, one breath, one step, one day at a time. The next morning, Amy woke up before the sun, her body still sore from the previous day's exercises, but her mind buzzing with determination. She sipped her peppermint tea slowly, savoring each warm drop, and watched Gage and Glenn play quietly in the living room. The house felt calm, almost sacred. She knew that these quiet moments were precious and that she had to hold on to them as tightly as she could. Tammy, on the other hand, had already been up for an hour. Leah had shown her a new stretching routine designed for her back and legs, and Tammy was determined not to complain too much. "I may be slow, but I'm not lazy," she muttered, adjusting her wheelchair to reach the mat. She didn't know it yet, but this routine would test both her strength and her patience, and teach her something important about pacing herself. The sisters reunited in the kitchen for breakfast. Instead of the usual sugary chaos, the table was modest: Greek yogurt, fresh fruit, and a few hard-boiled eggs. Amy glanced at Tammy, noticing the determination in her sister's eyes. It was contagious. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was carrying the weight of the world alone. They spoke about their goals for the day. Amy wanted to tackle meal prep, while Tammy insisted on trying a short walk outside the yard. Their trainer, Andrea, had mapped out a path that was safe but challenging. The first steps were awkward. Tammy's breathing was heavier than usual, and Amy's knees ached. But they kept going, encouraging each other with small smiles, occasional jokes, and subtle high-fives. Back inside, the sisters tackled a cooking challenge Leah had prepared. Low-carb wraps, vegetable-packed salads, and a new protein smoothie recipe awaited them. Tammy's hands shook slightly as she chopped, but Leah guided her with patience and gentle corrections. Amy, meanwhile, was perfecting the smoothie blender technique, adding berries carefully, making sure the consistency was smooth and sweet. After lunch, they sat together with their journals. Each sister wrote about her struggles, her fears, and the moments of triumph. Amy's handwriting was shaky but determined. Tammy's was confident, reflecting the newfound self-belief she was beginning to cultivate. They read each other's entries aloud. Tears were shed, but laughter followed, because even the rawest emotions were lighter when shared. That evening, as the sun dipped below the Kentucky horizon, the sisters settled in the living room. Gage was curled up with a book. Glenn was playing quietly nearby. Tammy looked at Amy and whispered, "We're doing this. We're really doing it." Amy nodded, holding her sister's hand. No more hiding. No more excuses. No more pretending we're okay when we're not. It was a small victory, but a monumental one. Every bite of healthy food, every step walked, every honest word spoken, it all counted. And for the first time, the sisters could truly see the path forward. They weren't just surviving. They were actively building the life they had long dreamed of. Outside, the world continued its usual chaos, but inside that home, there was hope, laughter, and the quiet hum of progress. And in that space, Tammy and Amy realized something profound. Together, they were unstoppable. The next morning brought a crispness in the air that felt like a fresh start. Amy was up early again, Gage clinging to her side, his small hands wrapped around her fingers. Glenn cooed from his baby seat, eyes wide with curiosity. Amy took a deep breath and smiled. Today was different. Today felt like the beginning of something lasting, not just another day to endure. Tammy rolled into the kitchen, her energy calm but determined. "All right, sis," she said, stretching her arms. "Let's show today who's boss." The sisters moved together, working as a team to prepare breakfast: scrambled eggs, avocado toast, and fresh fruit. Even the smallest of tasks felt empowering now, a contrast to the days when movement itself was a struggle. After breakfast, they set out for a gentle walk around the neighborhood. It wasn't much, just a few blocks, but it symbolized freedom. Tammy's wheelchair glided alongside Amy's careful steps, and as they passed neighbors who waved and cheered, the sisters felt a sense of pride swell within them. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were inspiring those who had watched their journey for years. Returning home, they prepared for a video session with their trainer, Andrea, who was joining virtually. The session was challenging but structured, balancing strength, flexibility, and endurance. Tammy pushed herself through each exercise, feeling muscles she hadn't felt in years. Amy laughed when she struggled with a plank hold, feeling her core engage, a reminder of how far she had come. Later, they gathered around the table for reflection, jotting down goals for the week. Amy wrote about consistency and patience, about showing herself love without judgment. Tammy focused on mobility and self-confidence, writing reminders that she was capable of more than she had imagined. They shared their entries, encouraging each other, tears and smiles blending together seamlessly. The afternoon brought a celebration of small victories. Gage and Glenn played in the yard while Amy and Tammy planted a small garden of vegetables and herbs. Each seed they placed in the soil felt like a promise, a tangible representation of growth, resilience, and the life they were nurturing for themselves and their children. Evening settled in with golden light spilling through the windows. The sisters prepared a simple, healthy dinner and sat together as a family. They laughed over shared memories, reminiscing about the hardships they had endured and the milestones they had reached. For once, the focus wasn't on pounds lost or calories counted, but on love, connection, and hope for the future. As night fell, Amy tucked Gage and Glenn into bed, feeling a warmth in her heart she hadn't felt in years. Tammy wheeled herself beside her, offering a quiet nod of solidarity. They had survived the chaos, the ridicule, the struggles, and now they were thriving. Not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Before heading to her own room, Amy paused by the window, looking out at the Kentucky skyline. She whispered softly to herself, "I am worthy. I am strong. I am enough." Tammy echoed the sentiment beside her. "We've come this far, and we'll keep going." In that moment, the Slaton sisters, Amy and Tammy, understood the most important lesson of all. Life isn't about perfection, fame, or numbers on a scale. It's about perseverance, love, and the courage to start again, every single day. And as long as they had each other, there was nothing they couldn't face. The camera fades out as the sisters sit in quiet reflection, a family united, hearts full, ready to embrace the next chapter of their extraordinary lives.